500 or so. I got this thing, I don't know, a couple of years ago probably. It's okay now, but it started out as a real disaster. I bought it secondhand with about, I think it was 13,500 or so kilometers on it. So fairly new. It's a 2013. So I went and inspected it. I didn't have money in hand, so I couldn't really test ride it or anything. But we started it up. It started up fine. I kind of checked the front wheel to see whether there was any sort of play in the steering or anything like that. It seemed all right. The wheel seemed fine. Everything kind of appeared okay, So I just figured, fairly new bike and low kilometers, so how bad could it possibly be? So I purchased the thing, and then kind of riding it home from after transferring the thing, I noticed there's a oh, look at this. I guess we'll go right. There's like a squeak in the rear wheel, and the guy had told me, that the rear brake pads were gone or whatever. But upon closer inspection, it had nothing to do with brake pads. It was the wheel bearings were shot, right? So I pulled the wheel and sent that off to the local shop to have those replaced because I didn't have the tools. Actually, it's not that tough of a job. I probably could have done it, but anyway, I sent it off. Then I got the wheel back, and I thought, okay, great, I'll go for a ride, and I went to start it. I started it up, but then the throttle wouldn't return. The throttle basically was stuck. You had to purposefully, it wouldn't snap back on its own basically. So I figured, okay, there's got to be something wrong with the cable routing or something. So I fiddled with that until I figured out that it was actually on the carburetor. It was the actual valve on the carburetor was it was so freaking gummed up that it was just it was just not returning. So I pulled the carburetor, cleaned it up, put it back in, and then the friggin' thing would not go over. Like it wouldn't get out of idle. Basically, it would start up, but it wouldn't. You couldn't accelerate out of idle. So there was somehow I'd washed dirt, even though it was now returning. It wouldn't. I must have washed dirt into one of the jets, right? So I pulled the carb again, did some massive cleaning to it. Couldn't, for the life of me, I could not get that dirt out. I don't know where the hell it was, but I, chased all of the jets with wire, and I freaking did everything I could, but I eventually just gave up and took it to a professional mechanic, and he did a rebuild on the carb, and that essentially took care of that. So then I thought, okay, now I'll take it for a ride, and just did some inspection of the thing, and the rear tail light was not coming on, like the brake light. So he had given me parts. It had like some sort of aftermarket thing on there, some tail tie. So I pulled that off and put the original fender on with the lights, and wired all that back in, and that fixed that. Then I started riding it. It was okay. I think I did maybe one ride out into the bush or something like that, and then when I got home, the rear shock was leaking. So I sent that off to be rebuilt. And I got that back, put that in, and about that time I realized that it was, burning huge amounts of oil. Oh, I also forgot to mention that there's like an air tube or whatever that leads from the box into the carb, and that thing had been broken somehow. It had been cracked, and the guy tried to repair it with some sort of stupid filler. So I assume that got into the carburetor, and that's what caused things. And possibly also was letting dirt in, which caused another problem, which was it was burning huge amounts of oil. You know, I think just huge amounts of oil. Like I would go out for a ride. I think it was like a 100 milliliters per 100 milliliters per 100 kilometers or something. I'd go for a ride, I'd come back, and the thing would need a half a quart, right? Like it was a lot of a lot of oil. So I took it back into the professional mechanic, who told me that it was basically the valves and valve stems. The actual head itself was foobar. So I had to do a top-end rebuild, replace the head and the valve guides. Maybe we did all that shit as well, because why not? And then it was fine until I got it home, and then the new shock or whatever that I had, the rebuilt shock, started leaking, so it didn't last very long. Ended up ordering one off of eBay and plunking that one in. So that was, I mean, it was just a freaking nightmare, this this machine. I probably spent like, I don't know, an extra $2,000 or something on freaking repairs. Rear wheel was not really true. I had to like fiddle with the spokes a bit on the rear wheel. I don't know, just endless problems. But now it's, after that it's been running pretty good since then. The petcock also started leaking as well, like, you know, soon after purchase. It's just the whole thing was just I don't know, just a nightmare, really. Well, here it is. This is my thumper sticker that I put on there. It's a, I guess, B-52 nose art from the World War II, I guess. So the bits I added were just these plates to case protectors or whatever. I added the bash plate, hand guards, changed the seat to a seat concepts, which is a bit wider in the back. Doesn't help that much, but it's a little bit more comfortable than the stock one. Luggage, of course, but that's about it. This is the stock tail thing, which is, I guess it's all right. Which is, I took off he had some sort of tail tidy thing in there. Recently replaced the chain and sprockets, which were totally brutal. Like the bolts on the front sprocket was just, you could spin it with your finger. It was so loose. That was brutal. It was definitely ready to be done. The tires the previous owner put on, they're Shinkos, which are supposed to be the Shinko Golden Boys. They're supposed to be the tire for this bike. I'm just a real novice dirt rider, so it doesn't help me much, but I've also done the brake pads, front and rear now. But yeah, so it's been pretty good since I did all that work to it. You know, or had most of that work done, actually. But yeah, it was a real bear to get this thing going when I got it. The bar risers were also previous owner. Yeah. So it's not it doesn't burn too much fuel now. Or sorry, it doesn't burn too much oil now. Doesn't burn a lot of fuel either. It's got an aftermarket Clark tank, which is nice. It you can get probably, I don't know, maybe 400 kilometers on a tank. I'm thinking tops. Yeah, so it's a pretty good bike. It's fairly nice around the city. It's just horrible on the highway. The gearing is such that you know, you get to fifth gear and you know, at like 70 kilometers an hour, and it certainly you know, keeps you from going too fast on the highways because it feels like it's gonna, you know, just the engine's gonna explode if you get over once you get over 100 kilometers an hour. So yeah, but around town it's kind of good. It'd probably be really cool as a supermoto setup around town. It's a light bike. It's got a fair amount of power for the weight. Um, One of the previous owners had put in the what they call the 3x3 mod, which is the on the top of the airbox you cut out a 3x3 inch section of it to let more air in, and then you change the jetting in the carburetor, um, and that's supposed to give you a little more power. So I don't know what it's like stock or whatever, but it seems pretty sprightly, I would say. Um, I don't know what else to say about it. The fueling is kind of fucked, but I don't know whether that's because of the mod or because it's, you know, this particular carburetor or what, but it's very jerky around low RPM. You know, you kind of like it's like nothing, and then there's a little jolt. So it's not very smooth. And I can't imagine that the original Japanese engineers designed it that way. So I assume there's something about this particular one or the mod that's done that. But anyway, it's not, you know, you can work around it. It's not a big deal. Whew. That was exciting. Oh my goodness. Ouch. Oh. Okay, this is getting a little more challenging than than I'm used to. Better pick the bike up before I... Momentum is your friend.